Imagine telling a military general like a decade ago that his real-time battlefield intelligence would eventually rely completely on a tech billionaire's private satellite network.
Right, they'd think you were crazy.
Totally. Or, telling a corporate CFO that her company's single biggest operating expense wouldn't be payroll or real estate, but something called an AI compute token.
Which most people still don't even fully understand.
Exactly. But today's morning briefing, dated June 5, 2026, proves one thing very clearly. The old rules of how the world operates are just, well, they're completely broken.
Yeah, the underlying systems running our society have shifted so dramatically that, honestly, most people haven't even registered the new reality yet.
Yeah.
You were looking at local symptoms of this massive global infrastructure rewrite.
And that is exactly why we're here. Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a towering stack of sources to get through today for you. We are looking at massive geopolitical conflicts, a historic trillion-dollar tech IPO, a really quiet but severe crisis in our local schools, and a genuine medical miracle.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. But our mission today is to cut through all that noise for you. We're not just going to read you the headlines. We want to unpack the hidden through line connecting all these seemingly isolated events. We're going to show you exactly why they matter to your daily life and, your future.
Because the sheer velocity of the changes in this briefing, I mean, it's enough to give anyone whiplash.
Yeah.
But there's a distinct logic to it if you know where to look.
So let's start by looking at the geopolitical reality because we have two major stories dominating the briefing today. First, the Iran war has officially entered its second month, and the political fallout in Washington is really escalating.
Yeah, it's getting intense.
It really is. The briefing highlights widening Republican defections. It specifically notes that two of President Trump's own cabinet members are publicly distancing themselves from his pick for acting director of national intelligence, Bill Pulte.
Right.
And at the same time, you have Senate and House Republicans pushing back forcefully on war powers, really questioning the administration's authority to launch further operations without direct congressional approval.
And concurrently, the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean is just highly volatile right now.
Yeah.
The U.S. brokered ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel is fracturing almost immediately. Hezbollah rejected the proposed terms. Israel has stated they will continue their strikes. And, well, global markets are watching oil prices swing wildly with every single update.
Now, before we go any further, I need to make a quick note. Because our stack of sources today includes deep dives into the Iran conflict and Washington politics, you are going to hear highly charged viewpoints from both the left and the right.
We're seeing a lot of strong opinions in the text.
Oh, absolutely. So, to be absolutely clear to you listening, we aren't taking sides here. We're not endorsing any of these political positions at all.
Not at all.
Our only job today is to pull back the curtain on the mechanics of the situation, looking purely at the strategic and technological data contained in the original source material. We're strictly neutral analysts here.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how the physical reality of these conflicts is bleeding directly into the digital realm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when we look at Lebanon, the physical strikes obviously dominate the news cycle. But the quiet, unacknowledged casualties of this regional conflict are the telecom networks, the GPS systems, and the undersea cables running across the Eastern Mediterranean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every time there is a physical escalation, immense pressure and disruption hit the cross-border digital infrastructure that the global economy relies on every single second.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because it's not just the cables under the ocean taking a hit, right? It's the infrastructure up in orbit.
Yes, exactly.
Going back to the Iran conflict, the briefing emphasizes that as this war drags on, commercial space-based intelligence has become the primary way the public, allied governments, and Congress are verifying what is actually happening on the ground.
And that shift alters the entire dynamic of global conflict.
Right. Fighting over the war powers without controlling the data pipeline is like arguing over the plumbing while the house is on fire. It misses the point.
That's a great way to put it. The debate over war powers in Washington isn't just a traditional constitutional debate anymore. It's becoming intrinsically linked to the question of who controls that commercial space data pipeline.
Because Congress can view the battlefield in your real time through private commercial satellite constellations.
Right, which democratizes intelligence, certainly, but it also creates a terrifying vulnerability. Governments are now utterly reliant on private tech companies to verify objective reality during a war.
It really makes you wonder how reliant global superpowers have become on private corporations to either wage or prevent a war. The data is basically the board the game is played on.
The reliance is absolute. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains exactly why we are seeing such an astronomical pivot in the financial markets regarding space hardware. The geopolitical need for data is driving a massive financial frenzy.
I'm really glad you brought that up because we need to talk about the biggest financial story of the day. SpaceX has officially priced its initial public offering ahead of its investor roadshow, which, by the way, is incredibly rare.
Very rare, yeah.
They priced it at $135 a share, targeting a $75 billion raise. But I have to stop you there. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the valuation they are targeting is $1.75 trillion. Trillion, with a T.
It's an unbelievable number.
It puts a rocket company right behind Apple, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. So I have to push back here. Is a $1.75 trillion valuation for launching metal tubes into space insane? Or are we fundamentally misjudging what this company actually is? What am I missing here?
You are missing the fact that it is no longer just a rocket company. I mean, that valuation makes no sense if they're just a launch provider. But SpaceX is executing a massive convergence play.
Okay, convergence of what?
We are watching space infrastructure, AI, compute, and chip fabrication merge into a single capital stack. For instance, the briefing notes they just secured Texas tax incentives for a new terafab chip manufacturing project.
Let's pause on that word, terafab. For someone not deep in semiconductor manufacturing, what does that actually mean?
It implies a fabrication facility operating at just an unprecedented scale, specifically designed to produce proprietary silicon.
So they're making their own chips for their own satellites.
Exactly. You need incredibly specialized hardware to run the AI that manages these massive satellite constellations, the exact same constellations providing the intelligence data we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Space tech is now fundamentally a hardware and semiconductor story.
You can't separate the rockets from the chips that go inside them.
Right.
And as if on cue, to prove your point about complete government reliance on private infrastructure, the briefing mentions this wild update from NASA today.
Oh, the ISS situation.
Yeah, they just had to temporarily shelter 5 astronauts aboard the International Space Station inside a docked SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule because they detected cabin leaks on the aging ISS.
The legacy government space programs are literally springing leaks. The ISS is aging out of relevance, and the commercial sector is serving as the actual physical lifeboat.
No.
So when you combine that monopoly on access to space with proprietary chip manufacturing and global data networks, the $1.75 trillion valuation starts to look less like a bubble and more like, well, a toll booth for the future of infrastructure.
So what does this all mean for the software side? Because if space is the new hardware frontier, then artificial intelligence is the software engine running on top of it.
Precisely.
And right now, that engine is burning through cash at a rate that is terrifying corporate finance departments across the globe.
The scale of the capital flowing into AI is just staggering right now. For example, AirTrunk, which is backed by Blackstone, just announced a $30 billion investment to build 5 gigawatts of AI data centers in India by 2030.
5 gigawatts. That's practically a small country's power grid.
It is. India is rapidly becoming a top-tier destination for AI training capacity due to a combination of cheap power, abundant land, and a massive technical workforce.
Meanwhile, on the software application side, a fintech startup named Ramp just tripled its valuation to $44 billion. Investors are throwing unbelievable amounts of money at companies that are AI native.
Because Ramp is essentially pitching AI agents that can quietly replace entire categories of corporate finance and back-office work.
Right. And Anthropic, the lab behind the Claude AI models, has officially filed for its highly anticipated IPO. But there is a massive bill coming due for all this experimentation, isn't there?
Oh, the bill is already here.
Yeah, here is the wildest stat in the whole briefing. TechCrunch is reporting that Uber blew through its entire 2026 AI coding budget by April.
By April.
4 months into the year, and the budget is entirely gone. At the same time, OpenAI is pivoting its Codex tools hard away from consumer applications and into enterprise white-collar workflows like legal and consulting.
Because they desperately need to chase stable revenue. The era of unlimited experimentation is over.
It's like the music stopped.
Exactly. 10 years ago, companies had to figure out how to stop wasting money on redundant cloud computing servers. Today, we are entering the era of what the industry calls FinOps-style governance for artificial intelligence.
So finance teams are finally demanding metered usage?
Yes.
Wait, before we go further, when finance guys complain about blowing the AI budget, what are they actually paying for? What is the core unit of cost here?
They are paying for API tokens.
Okay, what's a token?
A token is essentially a piece of a word or a tiny unit of computational power required for an AI model to process or generate text, code, or data.
So every single prompt costs something.
Right. Every time an employee uses a generative AI tool to write code, summarize a meeting, or analyze a spreadsheet, the company is charged a fraction of a cent in tokens.
It feels like corporate America just handed every single employee an unlimited corporate credit card for AI tools, and now the CFO is looking at the itemized monthly statement in a state of absolute panic.
That is the perfect analogy. And you can see that exact same financial tension in the Anthropic IPO filing. Well, Anthropic has always marketed itself as the safety-first AI lab. They built their entire brand on being the responsible, cautious alternative to OpenAI. But public markets are ruthless.
Yeah, they don't care about caution.
They demand profit, growth, and efficiency above all else.
So how do you reconcile a safety-first ethos with a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value?
That is the defining question for the entire AI industry right now. Regulators, developers, and investors are watching Anthropic very closely to see which master they serve when the pressure really hits.
You know, while tech billionaires and CFOs argue over trillion-dollar valuations and API token budgets, we really have to look at where this actually lands in the real world.
Yes, the human element.
Because regular institutions, specifically our public schools, are taking the absolute brunt of these massive tectonic shifts.
Local institutions are acting as the shock absorbers for global technological change, and they are buckling under the weight.
Let's look at the education briefing for a second. Generative AI has forced English teachers across the country to completely restructure reading and writing assignments so that students still have to do the actual cognitive work of thinking, even with a chatbot open in the next tab.
It's totally changed how homework works.
Right. And K-12 schools are abandoning basic coding classes because AI writes code faster than a middle schooler ever could. Now they are frantically trying to figure out how to teach AI literacy and infrastructure ops as entry-level skills.
And keep in mind, the academic deficits left in the wake of the pandemic are also colliding with this new tech reality.
The deficit is severe. Over 600 STEM faculty members across the University of California system just signed an open letter demanding the return of the SAT and ACT standardized testing requirements for admissions.
That's a huge reversal.
It is. They are publicly stating that incoming university students' math skills are so severely degraded that professors are having to completely redesign introductory STEM courses just to remediate basic algebra and calculus concepts.
Which really raises an important question about systemic failure versus individual capability.
See, I have to push back on the UC faculty's demand here. Are we blaming the students for systemic failure?
It's a fair question.
We removed the educational guardrails and testing benchmarks during the pandemic, expected students to learn complex math via a Zoom window, and now we're shocked that they drove off the road.
Yeah.
The irony is that we are upset they don't know the math required for advanced engineering, which is the exact engineering skill set required to sustain the space and AI hardware boom we just spent the first half of this deep dive talking about.
It perfectly illustrates institutional whiplash. Consider the impossible burden we are placing on local schools right now.
It's too much.
We expect them to manage the trauma of global geopolitical instability like counseling students who have family affected by the Lebanon conflict. We expect them to adapt to bleeding-edge AI in real time, completely rewriting their curriculums overnight. We expect them to remediate a massive generational math deficit.
And they have to do all of this while facing a crippling teacher shortage. The briefing notes that a new federal student loan cap is threatening to destroy the pipeline of incoming teachers.
Particularly in hard-to-fill, high-need roles like special education and bilingual instruction.
Right. Because if you cap the federal loans, taking on the debt required to get an education degree is no longer mathematically viable for a huge percentage of graduates.
You're starving the system of talent exactly when the demands on that talent have never been higher.
And you just laid out a scenario where a local public school is dealing with global trauma, AI curriculum rewrites, and a severe teacher shortage. But that lack of resources isn't just an academic bottleneck, right? It is a massive, glaring security hole.
Absolutely.
Because these underfunded schools are currently sitting on the front lines of actual cyber warfare.
Edge infrastructure is highly vulnerable right now.
It is grim for small organizations. Google just had to patch 124 Android flaws this month, including an actively exploited zero-day vulnerability being used to deploy stalkerware and surveillance tools.
That's a huge patch load.
And Cisco, this is just brutal to read. Cisco disclosed its 7th zero-day vulnerability of the year in its SD-WAN product line. 0 days and 5 months. Plus, a completely separate flaw in their unified communications manager that now has public exploit codes circulating on the dark web.
Which allows attackers to write arbitrary files and gain root access to the system.
Yeah. Let's break down why that is so alarming for someone who isn't a cybersecurity expert.
Well, a 0-day means the software vendor had exactly 0 days of notice before the vulnerability was actively exploited by hackers in the wild.
So it's a full-blown fire drill.
Exactly. Seeing 0 days in a single product family in 5 months is highly unusual.
And what exactly is SD-WAN? Why is that specific product being hit so hard?
SD-WAN stands for Software-Defined Wide Area Network. It's essentially the digital gatekeeper that connects remote branch offices, hospitals, and school districts to the main corporate network and the cloud. It manages the traffic. The fact that this specific choke point is being targeted so heavily points to very well-resourced, likely state-sponsored actors. They are targeting the edge infrastructure, where security budgets are the lowest.
So that local IT director at your public school, the one making $50,000 a year who was just asked to figure out an AI token budget, isn't just resetting student passwords.
Not anymore.
They are actively racing against global nation-state threat actors to patch public exploit code before the school's entire network is locked down and held for ransom.
It is an asymmetric war being fought in server closets across the country.
It is exhausting just looking at the map. Geopolitical conflict, trillion-dollar tech monopolies, enterprise budget panics, institutional whiplash, and cyber warfare.
It's heavy.
Which is why I intentionally want to pivot us to what is trending today. We promised you a reason to smile, and I think we all need a reminder of human joy and resilience right now.
Finding that balance is essential, honestly.
On the lighter side of the briefing, the internet is buzzing about the Stanley Cup final. The Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes just played an absolute 9-goal thriller in Game 1.
An amazing game.
Oh, incredible. Sports radio is debating if Vegas is cementing a dynasty or if Carolina can finally break through. And the Summer Game Fest 2026 is officially kicking off.
Right, the gaming community is hyped.
You have millions of people hyping up streams, looking for leaks for Final Fantasy VII Part 3, and waiting for a possible Persona 6 reveal. It is just millions of people coming together to share in the simple, profound joy of play.
The collective experience of entertainment is a deeply human counterweight to the structural crises we've been analyzing.
It truly is. But the main event, the actual tangible reason to smile today, comes from the world of medicine.
This is a huge story.
Researchers have released the latest clinical trial results for a drug called daraxonrasib. It is an experimental once-a-day pill created by a company called Revolution Medicines, and the trial results show that it has nearly doubled the survival time for patients with advanced pancreatic cancer.
That is a staggering medical achievement. Pancreatic cancer has historically been one of the most stubbornly undruggable cancers in human biology.
And the briefing notes a 97% 5-year mortality rate for advanced cases.
Right.
A 97% mortality rate is basically a death sentence. Why has it historically been so impossible to treat?
It comes down to the tumor's biological shield. Pancreatic tumors develop a dense, fibrous tissue around them called the stroma.
Like a literal wall.
Exactly. It acts like a fortress wall. Traditional chemotherapy simply cannot penetrate the stroma to reach the cancer cells. Furthermore, these tumors are often driven by a specific genetic mutation, the KRAS mutation, which acts like a permanent on switch for cell growth. For decades, scientists just couldn't figure out how to turn that switch off or pierce that fibrous wall.
But this pill does. Daraxonrasib isn't just a generic poison like old-school chemo. It specifically targets and inhibits that precise pathway, slipping past the fortress wall to turn off the engine driving the tumor's growth.
Which is why it's so effective.
This daily pill is extending life and drastically improving the day-to-day quality of life for these patients. Oncologists are calling it a true game changer.
It really is.
For the millions of families who have lost someone to this incredibly brutal disease, this isn't just a data point in a medical journal. It is a real, measurable reason to hope. And I think it's vital for you to hear this because beyond all the overwhelming data about API tokens and satellite imagery, technological and scientific discovery is ultimately supposed to be about this: extending human life, reducing suffering, and improving the human condition.
It frames everything we've discussed today in a completely different light. And, it leaves me with one final thought to consider before we wrap up.
Let's hear it.
We just spent this entire deep dive analyzing massive AI compute infrastructure, The 5 gigawatts of power being built in India, the trillion-dollar valuations for space and silicon convergence, and the sheer computational force being assembled right now.
Yeah.
And then we have this miraculous daily cancer pill that required years of complex molecular modeling.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
What happens when all of this new massive AI infrastructure isn't just used to generate Python code or optimize a corporate finance budget? What happens when that unlimited computational power is pointed entirely at our biology?
Wow.
We are already mapping proteins and simulating molecular interactions at speeds that were physically impossible a decade ago.
Huh.
Are we on the verge of treating the deadliest diseases in human history, not just with chemistry, but with raw, brute force computational power?
Wow, that is the zoom out moment right there.
Hmm.
Suddenly, that swirling hurricane of data and tech and capital doesn't look quite so intimidating. It looks like the engine for the next great leap forward in human health.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We know it's a massive amount of complex information to process, but you are doing the work to stay informed, and that matters. Keep questioning the information around you, keep looking for those hidden connections, and most importantly, stay curious. We'll see you next time.